Hello, and welcome to our presentation today about key strategies to supercharge your technology training. I've got a number of key strategies I want to talk to you about, and I've split them up in 5 and 5 to make 10 to make it a little easier to read and remember. So let's go through these, how to develop a strong training program. First of all, I think it's very important you develop relationships and connections. And this is important that you have a relationship with the people not only who are part of your team, but the people who are going to receive the training that you're developing. And this group that's going to receive your training, you need to investigate what are their needs. It isn't always about what IT feels or what our faculty development team feels you need to be trained on. It's important to see how they feel. And this is accomplished by either one-on-one interviews, through survey tools, but figure out what your audience needs. And tied to that is number 3, you want to develop content that is relevant. There's an old adage that you may have heard that what's good for IT is good for everyone else, and that really is not the case. You really have to, once you develop these relationships and you investigate what people need, you want to create this content which is relevant to them. You want them to be engaged in what you're trying to explain and to train people on. And when you develop your training plan, I like to use the metaphor of chess, and that to be a successful chess player, you need to think about moving 3 moves in advance before you actually do it. If you just move 1 move at a time, you rarely will be a successful chess player or strategist. If you can develop a plan and be thinking 3 moves in the future, you'll be much more successful. And then you want to create a communications and marketing plan to be able to explain why the training is going to be planned for, what entails a strong agenda, and then also how you review and make sure that your training was successful. So communication and marketing is very, very important. So then the next 5. Number 6, you want to develop or find those advocates in the field that will support your vision or where you're headed. And these are your allies. They'll help push your agenda forward, and having those relationships come into play, and it's a very important part of your strategy. Number 7, you can have the best vision and the best training program that you want to use, but it's only as good as you have an effective IT culture or a culture in your faculty development group. And we'll talk about that, how important that is to have that culture in place before you push ahead with your training program. I'm a firm believer in analytics, and by using analytics in your communication marketing plan, and also analytics on how well your training went, and if your end user retains what you're trying to get across, I think that's very important. It shows your success. And speaking of success, it's important to promote your success, and not only to your internal audience, but your external public audience about what your achievements have been. And number 10, and following the typical instructional design plan, and that is to review and modify it, and this is consistent through your entire vision of what you want to accomplish. Now, where do we begin? This is our ITS help desk. This is the center or the hub of the technology in our building. And when you have, if you have a vision, you have to make sure it's understandable. And to make it simple, there are 3 words here that kind of pop out at you on the screen, and that is, we want to be more focused, we want to be proactive, and we want to be customer-centered. Now, when you look at through each of these, there's some words that kind of are formed around these core competencies or core values. And your internal staff should know these, and everybody should be on the same page, that we're going to be more focused, be proactive, be customer-centered. These are a good way of starting your plan as you move forward. This is your typical ITS grouping. It could have people from networking, enterprise, help desk, customer support. In faculty development, you have similar, but maybe with different names and different roles. But you want to identify who your people are and how they can make you a success. And as part of the success, an important part of your plan is how you communicate. So let's talk about communication. And this is how we if we had a list of things, how do we communicate with our end users about our training, what we want them to know about technology? So some of these are pretty much self-explanatory. Email, website, Facebook, those are pretty much the standard fare as far as communication. Now, what we do, we tie our Twitter account to Facebook. So when we're talking about a training program, it's linked automatically to our Twitter account.
so we don't have to recreate the wheel. We also stream a lot of our training, and we use our tools like MediaSite. On our campus, we actually started using MediaSite for fundraising without any educational component, but that worked well for us. We did our graduations, then we did foundation activities and promotion. Then we realized, well, the faculty realized, hey, streaming technology would work for our academics. So we kind of went a little different way to be successful. But when we do training, we record it, we stream it live. And what's nice, once you record it, people can go back in their own time, 24/7, anywhere in the world with an internet connection, see our training programs. I think that's very important. We use YouTube as well, obviously, because that's ubiquitous as far as communication in video. We do our print. We also do print. For example, we do train in our residence halls, and because when we train as faculty, staff, and students, we might put door hangers on the doors to create awareness for training, security, things of that sort. And then, of course, we have our call center. Okay. So this gives you an idea of all the variety we have for training activities that we've done over the years. And some are vendor-based or product-based, some are event-based, and the rest of these are our client-based. And we're going to talk about how we created these and how we raise the awareness as far as the importance of training for a wide variety of people on campus. So let's start with the first one. This one's called Passport Technology, and I wish I could take credit for this, but a number of years ago, someone said, I think it was like maybe 15 years ago, someone said, we should do training like a passport to learn more about technology. So that's a great idea. So the moniker for this is that we want a passport to guide you to learn more about technology. And these are just, you can see the web presence. We create a lot of excitement. You'll see like Passport Technology 3, we had a countdown clock. We made sure we communicated this, but we marketed and promoted it well in advance of our events. And so let's take a close look. Well, how do you develop a passport technology to really engage your audience? So this is for faculty and staff. Okay. So this is an example like this passport technology. We required the people RSVP, so then we had a head count. And then we actually created small passports to each of the sessions. And what was nice about that is it's a guide, it's something you can hold in your hand. But you'll see in the picture there, there's a little registration for door prizes. And over the years, we found two ways to get faculty primarily to come to workshops are what? Food, a good program, of course, and door prizes. So in this case, what we did is when you'd come to a session, you'd have to get a sticker that says, yes, you've attended this session. And then at the end of the day, we'd award these prizes, which were donated by vendors and a wide assortment of things. We got to the point where we give a DVD player away or a boombox or a USB drive. And if you can imagine during the week, faculty are very busy individuals, but they would hang around for the door prize. And if it's 5:05 in the afternoon on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and faculty are coming back to make sure that they're engaged, it was a great way to get people, especially faculty, to be engaged in what we're trying to do and what our content was, and became a very strong following. So I highly recommend it. We had a wide variety of sessions that to explain, some technical, some more faculty, some software-based. It was important to get the faculty there to become engaged in this process. So that's Passport Technology. Another technique we use is called Tech in 20. And these are like quick hits. So what would happen, we might call these lightning rounds. So you had 20 minutes to go to a session, learn something very quickly and easy to understand. And then we had 10 minutes to get you rushed to the next session. So it's really kind of rapid fire. But Tech in 20 really, it was a great hit. Again, this was for faculty and staff. And it was just kind of on the surface, how to use PowerPoint, Excel, how to use pivoting tables, something that's very quick, something that's important, and something that faculty could really relate to. And that was highly successful. Another thing we do is that we have all these different ideas, and we talk about how do you figure out what you'd like them to know and what is relevant content for them. So what we would do well before our sessions is we do a Qualtrics survey. That's a tool we happen to use here. And we want to know three things. You're not interested in this. You might be interested in it. And yes, I definitely want to know more about this. So this is one example of one of our workshops. So we did this analysis, and I thought, well, there's probably not that many people who want to do, for example, this one would definitely attend. And we looked at the orange bar. It says creating presentations for the web. And I thought, I didn't know that. But it wasn't until we reached out to that audience to figure out, okay, now we know there's a definite audience for that. We should really look at creating content that it's going to be relevant to them. Some are not interested at all creating a podcast. So we thought, well, maybe that would be more like a one-on-one session and not spend an entire workshop on podcasting. So this is an incredibly important tool. And remember, just because our faculty development group says that people need to know this, or IT says you need to know this, we want to hear from our faculty and staff what is really on your mind. What do we have to do to make it easier to use these productivity tools to be more successful in your teaching, your learning, and doing your job, basically. So 1 year we were asked to do a faculty institute, and these are pretty labor intensive because usually to really embed people, you've got a 1 or 2 day event, and it's not going to probably be during the school year. So you have to do this during the summer. We found to be the most success. And our staff, especially in IT, tend to be overworked. Hopefully paid adequately. But when you come to your internal staff and say, we have a great plan for you, let's do a faculty institute. And their first look is, we're busy. And it seems like a lot of extra work. What's the motivation? So the important thing is you've got to get your staff on board. And we're going to come back to that, this idea of culture. And so we got individuals on our staff to do training programs on how to use streaming technology, how to use web apps, how to do Desire to Learn, all these different things. We did it for 2 days, and we really got them engaged. So that's how faculty institutes can be very successful. Now that was primarily just for faculty. So then we were always looking, well, what about our staff? That's important. So we came up with one topic, we call it HOT, hands-on technology. And one of the resources we kind of forget about sometimes are the students who work for us, and they have a lot of great ideas. So we want to make this kind of exciting, make it hot. So we engaged our students, and they came up with a series of videos. This is on YouTube, and through our technology day, I'd rather not play a video because I like to, as a video purist, I like to show it in 30 frames per second. And if you're interested, I can send these links to you. This is a great introduction for getting you to come to this event on this date. And it was very innovative, and the students had a great time coming up with content, and it was a highly successful program. Another one we've done is Tech for You. This is just for our ADAs or administrative support, kind of like your secretaries. And we made an event just for them. And you can see we have a good audience, 70, 80 people will come to these events. And what was interesting about it is that we had very engaging things that they want to know. We incorporated their ideas, and we worked collaboratively with them. And the feedback was extraordinary. They never had training offered to them. Number two is one of the largest responses we had gotten was it was the first time in their career that they were given a hot lunch. And at lunch, on the right-hand side of the screen is a picture of me. I did a PowerPoint, and I took some old photographs and matted in through Photoshop some of the people who are ADAs or administrative staff, kind of a tongue-in-cheek tribute to what they do on campus. And they thought, no one's ever done this for us. So highly recommend you do your training for beyond faculty. This is something that was interesting for us. This is an event that our CIO came to me one day in the hallway and said, Jim, could you do a technology showcase? And I said, what is that? And he said, you'll figure it out. So I started thinking, well, let's invite some technology people to come to our campus. And there's some pretty big names here, and it turned to be a huge event. I didn't expect Cisco and Dell and Oracle to come, but they flew out. And what can we do to help you? We didn't charge them. And they also did sessions for us. And then we did a trade show. And let me give you a sense of what it looked like. This is the kind of what it looked like as far as the event. A lot of excitement. Herman Miller brought furniture. We had one student who used to work for us who has since moved on to have a successful career at Intel with their SSD division. So he came back to the session, and he also offered us 6 hard drives or SSD drives as gifts, which was great. You can see a lot of excitement in this. There's a new building we had in our new Centennial Hall. And then I started thinking, well, let's make this even bigger. Cars have a lot of technology, computer technology in them. So I made a call to our local dealers, and they said, yeah, we'd like to be part of this. We'll bring our cars and show us the latest technology so people understand it isn't just about computers at your desktop. It's computers that operate our transportation. And then I got a call from General Motors, and they said, we'd like to bring down our new hotspot car. You can see how this develops, the excitement. First of all, you're going to have staff internally are excited about doing these things. How do you promote it? We ask these individuals and these companies to talk about what they're most proud of in their technology. Again, Cisco did teleconferencing, we had MediaSite, we had 3D printing, all the latest technology and how they can affect what you do when you're teaching, you're learning, and in your job. And the cars were just icing on the cake. And I have a link to interviews we did, and then we had the local TV stations and local newspaper. So you can see where it takes a lot of planning, but let's think beyond. And I had a quote the other day about good enough isn't. And we try to push the envelope and exceed people's expectations, not only in our service to our customer, but what we offer in our programming. One kind of side story is that we use social media to promote our events. This is an example of a company called TweetBeam, who I contacted and asked if we could use their technology at this one-day conference or technology showcase. And so they agreed, and I talked to them, and I said, could we use it? And what happens, basically, it shows, as people tweet at your event, it shows up on your display that you have in your lobby, and you've probably seen these at trade shows and at conferences. What was interesting is I said, I invited them to come to our event, and they said, Jim, we'd love to come. The only thing is we live in Denmark. So that was kind of gives you a sense of the international view of things, and it was highly successful. When we communicate to the campus, and this is an important part, we'll come back to this theme a number of times this morning, but we use an email integrator at times called MailChimp. You can use Constant Contact and others, and what it does, it will, like for example, our emails will come from its@uwlax.edu, but that's transparent to them. We use this to kind of show, we can track how people open our emails, basically how often, and what we do is when you send an email out to your staff, your faculty, or any students, and you want them to know something, or you want to talk about your training or introduce a new technology, you must keep it short and memorable. So we use this mantra of between 3 and 5 talking points. So in this case, we're using Desire Alert at this time in our history. These are 5 things you should be aware of, or maybe technology classrooms is another thing. And it works out extremely well to use this integration. It's very media rich and engaging. So what's nice about that, now think about when you send an email from your faculty development group or from IT, how many people on your campus actually open your emails or read them. So we track that. So these are 2 important emails. First of all, Office 365, which was a big implementation. Then scanning. I don't know if any of you deal with scanning exams. That's a pretty hot topic. And so in these 2 instances, 50 to 70% of the people on campus open our emails. That's a pretty high number. The industry average is about 16%. So if you can show that type of increased communication and reception of what you're saying, you're going to be successful. So what we do then is we talk about analytics. I said that in our top 10 key strategies. We kind of track when people open their emails, and no, we do not look at individuals as far as if they open it. However, I think the all-time record was someone opened an email from us approximately between 50 and 60 times. That's the all-time record. But that's kind of an outlier. What's important here is if you look at the picture, people will come in the morning. We set the email up the evening before on midnight, let's say, and about 8 o'clock, that's a big peak. And there's another small peak at 4, another one at 8 on this particular email. So we track the best time that people would open their email, basically, and it's good data to have. And again, in this case, over 60% of the people open this particular email, which is very, very good. Then we also look at click mapping, and what this tool allows you to do is that this email will tell us 65% of the people who clicked on links went to this link. This one was 18%, and this one was 16%. So what was important here is that the 65% link it was kind of common sense. That was about the schedule upcoming, and then these are other links about other information. So we try to create emails and learn from them and change things by people's behavior as far as when they click on the email. We also offer feedback forms to get more feedback about. You can see in the lower left-hand corner when we send emails, so we can hear what they say. Do they like what we're sending them? And that's very successful. So let's talk a little bit about students. We want to get them very involved in our communication as well. So as Tom had mentioned earlier, Ed did a fair amount of work as a CNN reporter and a number of years. And you could write stories which would appear on their CNN website or on the news. And we thought, what a great tool to get students involved. So I would go in the classroom and the faculty would invite me, and we get them to learn about how to write good news stories, how to increase their visibility by audio or video, still pictures. And then we offered to help them open up an account, and they would write stories. And it's a great way of students pushing the envelope about what makes for a good story. And this is just some of the classes and what we embedded ourselves. And the faculty were very excited because it gave the students more visibility. And I would work with the producers in Atlanta and pick out a couple stories that we thought would be really good. And what was nice about the experience that some of the students did get their work on CNN, and it made them proud. They realized the importance of social media. And I have a quote that you can attribute to me. I came up with what is social media? And what I would say is social media is history in real time. And that's really true, and more so today than ever, especially in the world of politics and world news. So it helps students to piece this together and connect the dots. And this is kind of thinking outside the box. Faculty loved it, students loved it, and it was a good way of training our students or people that are going down a career about the importance of writing and telling digital stories. Now in IT, we have a lot of special projects that we're given the opportunity to, we call it challenges, but we like to call them opportunities. One day we were asked to deploy a VoIP system, and some of your campuses, I'm sure you've done this, and it's kind of a daunting task because we really didn't know what it meant, and we have a kind of a habit of doing deployments in a very short period of time. This was done in about 3 months, and we had no idea what this meant. And so we had a control center. We had to train people what was coming down the pike. Why do you want to give your old telephone up to a new VoIP phone? And I have to tell you that I never knew how many, what 1,600 iPhone or VoIP phones look like until you see the boxes stacked up. And then we, as a team, we realized this is a daunting task. How do we take something you've used for many years, and now you have a VoIP phone? How do you use it? What do you do if you have problems? How do you use it effectively? So one of the things we used, we turned to a media site, but also YouTube, and we did a series of videos. This is kind of a tongue-in-cheek look at the new phone you'd be receiving for training. And we made me like one of the giants, or well, I was a small guy, and people loved it. So I talked about the phone as a huge device, and this is the buttons you press. This is the strategies of how it works. And by using a little bit of humor, people remembered that communication plan. Now, we talked about the positive things about training. Sometimes your training plans will go south. And what do I mean by that? Many times at campuses, because of budget cuts, sometimes training is looked at as an expendable commodity or a cost-saving opportunity. And that happens on campus. So the challenge is what do you do in a case where you might have trainers or you have less of a budget for training? What are your options? And so I think it's important to look at options and be prepared. And these are 3 things to consider. One is, first, you can still do in-service perhaps, but maybe not to the level you've done in the past. Or if you don't have staff on your campus, we've reached out to companies, and then they have come in and actually done training. It can be costly, but again, you're not paying for individuals to be on staff. So it's a way to kind of keep your training moving forward even though you may not have the resources at that time. We also are a big proponent of using knowledge base, which is basically a technique of having the most commonly asked questions gravitate to the top of your question list. And that's good for a 24/7 service to provide answers to your customers or your client base. And we use that quite often. The other thing we've used is lynda.com, which is now LinkedIn Learning, for those who haven't seen that change. And this is a wealth of information. We use this not only for our people on campus who subscribe, but we also use that internally to IT. And I think that's a great success for us as well. And then also in this period of time when you have big deployments, and we really kind of push the envelope to get our staff within IT to present for those who don't like to present because they have a fear of it. But we found when we look for those individuals in IT that really can do a good job, we can get them in front of people. It makes them for professional development for them, and it works extremely well. And I highly encourage you to get your staff involved with doing in-service training. We talk about failure, and this happens, and this is a great quote I really like. It's called, "I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that wouldn't work." And that was attributed to Thomas Edison. Let me explain how that plays in your training program, in that you've got to try many different things. Some things may not work. The trick is, how do you make it successful? And this is where I'm going to talk a little bit more about your culture. If you want to be successful in your training, these are some things that are important to make sure you have the people around you to make successful. So let's talk about these 10 key strategies about your culture that you work in. And this is not just IT. This could be in your faculty development group. And I want you to think about this. For example, these are the 10 things that I want you to kind of leave you with today to remember to be successful in your training program. Let me take a couple of these and I'll explain why they're so important. First of all, when you look at your organizational structure, people on the outside really don't care about the little boxes you put people in, that this is my job, this is what I do, and this is only what I do. We try to get that away. Organizational structure is for HR and when people get hired and to know their job responsibilities. We want to kind of push that idea to the side and focus on the people within your structure. Now, Wayne Brown, who you may have heard, this is a great question about when you have a CIO who's trying to map out where you're headed. They asked what the most important traits these people should have. And I think this is a good slide to kind of think about. When CIOs are asked about what are the most important skills they should have, CIOs think, well, they have to have good communication skills and leadership skills. Okay? Then you ask your institutional management, that'd be your administrators on your campus, what do you think, what do they think CIOs should have? And they think technical skills, because they have a phobia if the network goes down or email does not work. They have a freak out moment and they want that CIO to make sure that they can fix the problem. And then when they talked about technology leaders, that might be you and I. Leadership and communication are the two. And when you look about those three categories, the two most common are communication and leadership. That's what's the most important. And I think this is an important skill to look at your staff. So we talk about communication. That's one of the key core competencies we need. And when we talk about communication, it's across campus. Maybe it isn't just technology, but that face-to-face communication, doing open forums, going to them. Don't just have your clients come to you, go to their office and find out, how is technology working for you? Do you need a specific technology training? How can we make that better? And then we have an integration technology plan, a communication plan. We mentioned how we use MediaSite. This is an example how we use a technology in a variety of ways. I mentioned earlier today that we use MediaSite for fundraising. And then we came down and we have when presidents or dignitaries come to our campus, we would stream that live and record it. And that would become a learning object. Then we might have a teleconference and we think, well, let's use MediaSite to stream that live during the teleconference. We did our passports this way. We did our MOOCs this way. And the lower right-hand corner is an important picture. Bob Hoare, who used to be a faculty member here, was a proponent of doing MOOCs. And I encouraged him to come to Madison and do a live webcast. He'd never done one before. And I'll never forget, just before the webcast was going to begin, and they would count down in 4, 3, 2, 1. I could see him fidgeting, and then 1. And Sean Brown, who was our moderator that day, said we have 60 countries online at this time. What was good about that experience is the faculty realized the power of webcasting and streaming. and that he could connect his expertise with professionals all over the world. And sometimes it's important to introduce technology to our faculty and show the power of it. And this is one great example how we did that. We also, when we talk about communications in our training, we also bring in our chancellor, our CFO, our CIO, faculty, staff, and students to be part of our discussion. And I think that's also very, very important. Additionally, I talk about communication and promoting our successes. When we do something at our campus, I highly recommend you talk to your local press, talk to your campus that you're doing this. And then also get the TV stations, because when you leave at night, this is a great way to show people outside your campus of the excitement and what you're doing internally to your campus. It shows that the things you're doing have a great impact and great successes. Empowerment, another great example of that. When you have a team in your faculty development group or your IT, do they feel empowered to make decisions? Are they part of the discussion? Or is it just one person is leading the charge? And this is where it's important about empowerment. I will tell you a quick story that one of our CIOs who came to interview once, he asked the question to the managers, do you feel empowered? And I remember looking around the room to each manager and their head was down, and that told us, and it told him, we didn't feel empowered. So that's just management, but what about your staff? What about your end user? Do they feel empowered with using technology? Another one is that vision. Do you know where you're headed? Now, earlier in this presentation, I talked about the goals and to make sure people internally know where you're headed. This is important, that it's a vision of everyone, and then your leader of your group is pushing this vision forward, but it's a team vision, not just a one person vision. Are you able to take risks? This is something else we talk about, that people are afraid to take risks. I'm not saying you should have a card up your sleeve, but I think it's important to be aware of feeling comfortable of taking those risks, that they're calculated, you've done your research. We also talk a lot about trust. If you're going to have a successful group that's going to do these training, do you trust one another? Do the people outside your department trust you? And that does not happen overnight. It's something you develop, and you have to spend time on developing that mutual trust that you're into this together and working with them. Again, I like to point out the idea of strategy. And again, I use the example of chess. When you develop your training program, always try to think more than one move in advance. If you're just a one move player, you will not be successful. Always think down the line. The other thing we kind of forget about is empathy. And this is not only empathy for the people around you in your department, but empathy for your end user. And that's how you develop your training program. Have you worked with them on relevant content? Is it something they want to learn? And we also try to break down this barrier in IT. There are some that say what's best for IT is best for everyone. And that's not always the case. And it should not be the case. So have some empathy about when you're going to offer this training. Have you done some pre-training or some pre-assessment? Have you done some post-assessment? Have you reviewed how successful your training is? And this is the importance of empathy. Understand your end user. And then we have a moniker on our campus about failure. We try to celebrate our failure. I know it's not easy to do, but if you have a training program that you want to understand how you can do better, it's okay to fail. It's okay to take risks. But certainly help people get there and actually get past the idea of failure. Innovation, I'll show you some examples. They have a lot of variety of training sessions that we have, but it's always kind of pushing the envelope, seeing what other people are doing. And I encourage you, if you have ideas, please feel free to share it with us. But I think the sharing of innovation it's what's makes success. I think Steve Jobs says innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. I think there's a lot of truth to that matter. Collaboration, what I want to point here is that when you're planning, and this is beyond just training, this is in IT and technology in general, bring people to the table. And I learned something a number of years ago that when you have a meeting, it's always good to say who should have been invited, who was not invited last time to our meetings. And this goes with internal meetings with your faculty development group, IT, campus planning. Always have an open chair for people to be part of the discussion. That will breed success down the road. Now, we talk about training. There's also a number of different environments. So this is an example. This is what our help desk looked like about 4 or 5 years ago. and it looks like a clinic. You may have an area like that yourself in your area, and this extends beyond just help desk. This extends to your training rooms. Do you take pride in how they look? Does the technology work well? Is the seating conducive to learning? And this is a case where we didn't like the way it looks, so but there's some discussions, some collaboration. We realized this is what it looks like today: open environment, dual monitors, and it's more like an Apple Store type of motif. But there's still places there to get the job done. There's some little cafe seating and some other seating that you're collaborating with your end user, and I think that's important. So we talked about all these things. I'm going to conclude with a real life example. So we talked about all these different risks, these strategies. This is put in action. Earlier last year, we were asked to do a duo or dual factor authentication for the campus, which is a big cultural change. And you in the audience probably have done this. This is just one example of what we had to do. We decided to do training hands-on because we want to hand out our fobs, explain how to use your cell phone. And it's important that we do these open forums. What did we do? We talked about it earlier. We did a lot of communication. This is some updates, made sure people know what the training was, what's a fob, what are we doing this for, because of higher security. And this is a challenge because we had a very fast timeline. And what do I mean by timeline? Well, remember about mapping out your strategy. So back first of the year of 2018, okay, we're going to retreat in our division and lay out what we're going to do. And then we have to train our staff. We've got to do some videos about Duo, hands-on training. We have to put in there things that are happening in our area, semester timelines, and then all the way here. During this period of time, we actually had to compress it even further. So having these roadmaps is critical for your success. And this is, again, taking what we talked about earlier in this webinar and putting it into action. And so we had to explain to people what is multi-factor authentication? What is this two-step process? Well, consider that before this, you log into your email, you're done. Well, now we're going to tell people, first you log in, and you have to log in again to prove that you're the person that actually is logged in the first time. So then the question is, well, why are we doing this? What do I have to do? What happens if I don't do it? And what kind of training is available? And who's going to be there if I have problems? And what happens after 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon? So these are the type of things that we had to think through. And by the training that I talked about earlier, we were well set up to be able to deploy this technology, and it was very successful. There were some challenges. People were afraid. And how we got people to come around is we shared data about, well, how many people are actually enrolled? What is the deadline? What happens when you are required to do dual factor authentication for gaining access to your email? Well, if you don't follow these processes, you won't get your email. You may not get your statement for your how much money you made your salary for that week or the month or the year. So you can see where the importance of explain the importance why you're making a change in technology. Make sure you understand how much training they require, and make sure they feel comfortable, and then go back and say, did you learn what we thought you should learn in this training? Okay. So then the key strategies. These are the 10 that we talked about. I want you to kind of think about these. And again, as we conclude today, if you have more questions or if you want some of the links to this, feel free to ask or send me a note or to Tom, and we'd be happy to share these with you. I guess, Tom, at this point, I'm open to asking or providing some answers to some questions if there's any out there today. Thank you, Robin. How we do this is that when we have an idea for any technology, let's say as embedding video in PowerPoint, which there's been a number of success stories and disasters, and so we thought, well, it seems like that's an important topic. We'll do a Qualtrics survey and we'll send it out, and then see if there's interest outside. We also go to meetings of governance groups. We present to student government, faculty government, and get a sense of what they are interested in. And the third thing is we also use our ticketing system. So if we see a number of tickets at the help desk that says there are a lot of people having trouble with a specific technology, then we know we should consider some training to cover that. So I think, Cindy, that's a great question. We use those 3 tools, and we come back and did we do a good job? And I think if we get good feedback, we move on to the next technology. But we're always looking. We're always looking. I saw that. Hey, Cindy, I feel for you. I hope you had a good deployment. We probably made the mistake. Well, not a mistake. We were told that we thought we had a year. We went down to 4 months, which I don't recommend. But when you have security protocols at the system level, you have to make it work. The one thing I'll give you some feedback. There are still a few people I have not signed up for Duo. We're not 100%, and I don't know exactly why, but I think it's good to show your administration also how, as you go through this, how many people who have enrolled, and if they can see an upward tick, people more important are using this technology. Also, what's helped us along with Duo is to get people to be our advocates in the field. And hey, Jim, this works great. I use my cell phone rather than a fob, and so when we hear stories like that, we like to to share those. If our CFO says, "Hey, Jim, I can use my cell phone. It works great. I don't need a fob." Telling those stories to others has been really successful. So I wish you the best of luck. And if you have more questions, I'd be happy to talk to you offline. So good luck to you. That's great to hear. It's another great question, Robin. It doesn't take that much time. I set up, I think the most time would take is just to import your email addresses. What the model for example, we have about a monthly contract for about 20,000 instances, and that'll cost you with a university discount about $127, and it's money well spent. It's pretty much click and point and click to create your template. I would say it's minimal. You can do an email. It's going to take more than just doing a text email, but you can do something within like 15, 20 minutes. I've done it in 5 minutes or less. I don't recommend that when there's a crisis, but well thought out. It doesn't take much time at all. Now, I will tell you, there's nobody to call for support. So it's all online support, which sometimes I kind of worry about, but it's pretty much understandable as you go through it. And I can show you how we do it. But I like it because it will embed still images and video, and it gives you great analytics. It'll tell you what country people are from, and it's a good database. So I think not much time at all. Your other question is a great question. Do you need a single person devoted to it? And you're looking at them. Now I'm a director of a pretty big enterprise here. I like doing that. I have a backup, but I think the challenge with communication is that it's hard to share it if you want to make sure that your message is uniform. I would say it would take 1.5 people, and it doesn't take that much time if you automate it. Either traditional email or through MailChimp, you can have forum emails ready to go. And it's not that difficult. Now, that's my personal interest, to be fair. Some people don't necessarily come from communication backgrounds, and it may look as more like a chore. But if you have a deep interest, you're organized, you can do that as part of your job. We're unusual here. There are departments that have a person dedicated to this. And if you have the staff, it makes it a lot easier, especially for a situation like myself. I do a lot of administration of technology, so if you get people to help with story ideas, it helps a great deal. And then, of course, we use Facebook, which is tied to Twitter, like we talked about earlier. So it's all, once you set it up, it isn't that difficult to do. It's a great question. And then, and Tom, and the group, if you have other questions, you're welcome to send me an email or chat later. Again, the links that I spoke of for video, we have other ones we can share with you as well as we have some media site presentations we can share, and those have been very successful.